Now let's go back to the strategic stuff. We'll save the economy for Sandra Smith and Steve Moore in a little while. We're going to bring in Alex Gray, former National Security Council Chief of Staff, Aaron Cohen, Israeli Special Ops veteran, founder of Gideon. Fellas, so let me start, Alex. I mean, one point I want to start. Mr. Trump has said from day one that he was willing to negotiate with Greenland, Denmark, with NATO. You know, you can't find a newspaper that will put that in there. I've said it on this show every single night. I read his Truth Social. He said he was willing to negotiate, and negotiate he has, okay? In his own way, the guy's a brilliant negotiator, art of the deal. Now, I want to get your take on this. I mean, it looks like this deal will give him access pretty much to everything he wants. We'll be calling on prior treaties with Greenland and Denmark and NATO. He'll have access to the old Thule Air Force Base. There may be other military bases. The Air Space Command is available. Maybe we'll carve up new stuff. I mean, it just seems like everyone's signing on, and as our Peter Doocy just reported, it's now playing well in Greenland. I mean, because the sovereignty, there's partial sovereignty, they'll work all that out, but America will get what America needs, right, to guard freedom and stop China and Russia from their mischief.
You're 100% right, Larry. And I would not want to be in Beijing and Moscow today, because they're waking up and they are seeing that President Trump, like Margaret Thatcher in the Falklands, like Ronald Reagan when he bombed Libya in 1986, they identified core national interests, and they were willing to go toe-to-toe with even our closest allies if we felt that our interests were at stake, like they were in Greenland. And if you're sitting in Beijing and Moscow, you're thinking, if Donald Trump's willing to go toe-to-toe with our own allies over something he views as strategically vital, what is he willing to do against our adversaries? Not only does this accomplish everything the president has tried to get since you and I were in the White House, but he has now shown extraordinary persuasive power and deterrence to our adversaries.
I mean, Aaron Cohen, I don't know if you know Greenland or what, but you know how the game is played, and you know what the ICBMs can do, and you can see it, you know, from Moscow. You fly right over Greenland on the way to Washington, D.C. The strategic importance of what Mr. Trump is doing is essentially beyond criticism, okay? He's willing to negotiate. He has negotiated. Looks like a good deal, Aaron. People are citing the British Cyprus, you know, which it's the United Kingdom. It's owned by Cyprus, but the United Kingdom used the military bases. That's more closer to your neck of the woods. Maybe that's true. Maybe that's a simplification. But I think it's going to work. I mean, I think it's in everyone's interest, Aaron, to work. That's the key point. It's in NATO's interest. It's in Greenland's interest. It's in America's interest.
So the British Cyprus precedent, Larry, I think is the key precedent that matters that you just mentioned. And this approach that Trump is doing, in my opinion, does in fact, as you just said, mirror that long-standing agreement with Cyprus. And so the UK, just to give people context, doesn't own Cyprus, but it maintains permanent sovereign base areas that give it full military access and control where it matters most. And from the military perspective, which I can speak to, that's exactly what Trump is signaling with Greenland. So to be clear, it's not annexation, it's not force. This is what we call durable security framework that guarantees long-term U.S. access for that missile defense, which is critical, space tracking, and that Arctic control. So it's a proven allied model. This isn't some radical idea. So I'm with it 100%.
Yeah, it's the old, I mean, basically a lot of this centers around the old Thule Air Force Base, all right? My late great father-in-law flew in and out of there when he was in the Air Force, full bird colonel, God bless and rest his soul. But the point is, we know how to do this. Everyone's going to be happy with it. All of the sort of the ownership stuff, the joint sovereignty. I mean, here's the thing. I'll go back to you, Alex, on this. This will save NATO. I made this point last night. I'm going to keep making this point. This will save NATO. NATO was headed for trouble. Dissolution, not because of Donald Trump, but because what were those Chinese and Russians doing? Now that the Arctic stuff is, you know, the snows are melting, now that they're putting money in here and money in there, now that we have to worry about Arctic strategy, what do you think they were doing? Were they conjuring up dinner parties and tea parties and rock and roll dances, or were they representing their own self-interest? Do you see what I'm saying? Trump, on the economy, I'm arguing Trump's trying to save Europe from itself. But right in here, he's trying to save NATO from itself. He even said so in his Davos speech, even though very few people except Walter Mead wanted to talk about it. This is what he's doing. The stakes are very high here.
You're totally right, Larry. He saved NATO, I would argue, in the first term when he forced NATO to actually spend the money that Barack Obama had gotten them to promise they would spend at the Wales summit in 2012. They're actually now spending 3.5 to 5% of GDP on defense because the president made them do it. And now he's translating that into the Arctic. And I think what you're seeing, Larry, is the point about sovereignty and the point about what's the future of Greenland. The concern has always been that one day Greenland will get independence and the Chinese and the Russians will subvert that independence and pose a national security threat to the United States. This type of sovereignty carve-out is exactly what we need to make sure that we don't have to worry about that.
Yeah, I mean, you're exactly right. I mean, people were talking last night. People come in and out of their ports. The Greenland, they don't know who they are. People come in and out of their ports randomly. I mean, it's a hell of a thing, Aaron Cohen. And look, there's various treaties down through the years. I've been doing some homework. New York Times has a good story. Actually, I got to give credit to Zero Hedge. Very good coverage. 1951 Greenland defense agreements. I don't know the details of these agreements, but it certainly creates, some kind of platform for a continuation. I mean, we ought to know what the Chinese and the Russians are doing, just like we ought to know not only up in the Arctic, but we ought to know what they're doing in the Western Hemisphere, which is part of Mr. Trump's policy, Aaron, right? I mean, he wants them out of the Western Hemisphere. And when you look at the map, we have an excellent map if we put it on the full screen. Greenland is very much a part of the Western Hemisphere. I mean, look at this. It's clear as can be. And it ain't that far from the NATO European countries either. That's why I say it's consistent with all of his policies, Aaron.
That's right. That's right. So, Larry, here's where I'm at with this on the military reality and why Greenland matters. Greenland sits at the center of the Arctic corridor. See, they're between Russia, China, and North America. And from my standpoint, from a defense standpoint, it functions as a missile early warning platform, a radar and space tracking hub, and then we refer to as a forward defense buffer protecting the U.S. homeland. It's also a logistic choke point as Arctic shipping routes open up, which is your world there with that economic side. But the U.S. already operates out of the Pacific Space Base. So Trump is just making a larger point here, Larry. Temporary access today is no longer sufficient in an era of hypersonic weapons and what we call near-peer threats. And so if you don't see the launch early, Larry, you can't stop it. And so, like you said, with China and Russia, this has nothing to do with Denmark, by the way. He's not threatening his allies. He's just responding to reality. And Russia's already aggressively militarized the Arctic. China openly calls itself a near-Arctic power in its expanding influence through their infrastructure and the shipping. And so if the United States doesn't lock it down, China's going to fill the vacuum. Russia controls the northern approach, and then America reacts late. So his message is simple. We don't wait anymore, and that's consistent with President Trump's doctrine. I'm all for it.
Absolutely. In the nick of time, trying to save Europe from itself. Thank you, gentlemen. Alex Gray, Aaron Cohen, you're both terrific. We really appreciate it.